All right, let's get started here. Everybody, it's Friday. Want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. Today we're going to talk about employee productivity. So with me today, we have Brian Lucarelli. He is the VP of Client Strategy for NST. Say hi, Brian.
I'm saying hi.
Hey, what's happening, buddy? And then we have Tony Worst. He is our product expert. Tony, say hi.
Hi there.
Great. So again, want to thank everybody for joining us. Hope everybody out there is staying healthy, staying safe, protecting all the loved ones that are out there. As I mentioned today, we are going to be talking about employee productivity, and I'm stressing employee productivity because this is really what we wanted to focus on, right? The productivity of your employees, what applications they are working on, how are they working, how long they're working, and potentially maybe this piece of software can help some correct some behaviors. Maybe you don't want them working in this application. Maybe they are looking at the wrong websites, and we really want to use this as a way to help your employees remain productive. And whether that is they are working from home, like most people are now, and whether that's they're working in the office when we go back to what everybody is calling the quote unquote new norm. But I do tend to find that even with the new norm, there's going to be a mix. You're going to have some people that are going to be, in the office all the time. You're going to have some people who are going to be a little bit of a hybrid back and forth. And then who knows? We may have some people that are they're going to remain remote. So with that being said, we're going to get started. Brian, Tony, anything to add, or we're ready to rock?
Let's do it.
All right, let's
Sounds
do
good.
it. All right, let me move my screen over. Let me know. All right, so again, so NST put ourselves in a sandbox here. So you're seeing NST data, right? So you're seeing our sandbox here and all the users at NST. This is the dashboard view. So when you do log in, this is the view you're going to see. It's really, really interactive, and I'm going to show you just how interactive it is. I'm going to show you all of the quick pods that you're going to see right on the dashboards and what we can do with them. I'm going to show you all of the different filters that we can put on each pod as well. And let's get started. Brian, Tony, feel free to jump in anytime. All right, so dashboard coming in. So here we are, right? So first filter I have is yesterday. I'm going to change that. I'm going to look at last week's data, and obviously that's going to change all of my data. All right, so again, what we're looking at here to start is we're looking at, and this is a good way to start, is we're looking at employee productivity, right? So, and what defines productivity? So really what's defining productivity is A, that you're at your desk, right? And you are working on either A, websites, B, applications that the organization has deemed productive, okay? Some people that you'll find, going to newsday.com may or may not be productive. And I'm going to show you different things of how it may or may not be productive. But I think the key thing here is you're defining what sites and applications you are deeming productive. There are some defaults that are in there, but as the software picks up different applications and websites that your users are going to, you're going to have to define whether or not they are productive or not. You can also classify the applications and websites in categories. So in other words, there may be an IT category, there may be a admin category, there may be a sales category, depending on, okay? So again, here we're looking at NST's data, right? So I can filter again by last week, by the number of days, and so on and so forth. Up on top, I can filter on all users. I can come down and I can specify an individual user should I want. I can refresh my screen, and obviously I can print it, right? Some of the pods that we're going to look at, and they're calling this quick stats. So they're breaking this out we're breaking this out as far as websites and applications, right? So here for NST, we're saying, hey, there's been 198 of productive hours spent looking at websites versus 24 that have been unproductive, and then 12 that have been undefined. Same thing with applications. Applications we're deeming here 763 hours, and then 4 hours of unproductive applications, okay? The interesting piece about this is the real-time piece, right? So here are all the users that have the software running on their machines, and basically we can almost see, right, again, what they're looking at, right? So I'm going to use Albert as an example. Albert, I know, is looking at Log Me In, right? And he's looking at NST's Log Me In account, right? I can see Brian, right, who is currently conversing with Sean Wilson over Microsoft Teams. I can see Dave, who is currently using an NST application called Manage. I can see that Henry is also using Manage. I can see that Lewis is actually logged into a client's machine helping them because Lewis is on the help desk. I can see Mike is working on a 365 admin center for a customer, and so on and so forth, right? So this gives you some real time as to what the user is actually looking at. In addition, it will show you what if the user is passive, right? So in other words, Dimitri right now is passive, which means he's really not active on the machine, right? You can see if I can find a passive lock. So here's passive locked, right? So this is James. His machine is on. It's checking in. It's passive, and the machine is locked, right? Which basically means the machine is locked. He's not currently looking at his machine. Okay. Moving down the productivity chart here, right? So we're going to look at productivity, which is really what we want to look at, right? And this is looking at the organization as a whole, day by day, right? So obviously, I'm trying to think. I think this is Sunday, so obviously you're going to have less productivity, right? But the software is still checking in. Let me close that. You're going to have Monday here, passive versus productive, right? And again, you're going to see a lot of passive time, right? Because as users leave their machines on, right, but aren't in front of them, that's going to consider passive time, right? One individual I do want to point out is Tom, right? This is Tom Cole. He's our controller, right? So you can see Tom over the course of the week, right? Here's his productive time, but here's his passive time. Tom, the reason why his passive time is so high is because Tom logs into a server that runs our financials, right? But he's only in that server for a period of time over the course of the day, but the server is still up and running with his login. So Tom is, he's getting actually doubled hours because he's logged into 2 different spots at the same time, right? So when you go and you look through at the data, and I'm going to show you a couple of things like that, you're going to want to figure out, okay, so why is Tom's passive time so high, right? And here we can filter out, right? I should have probably turned off my Teams, but here is we probably should have filtered out by productive and unproductive, right? So if I want to look at total time, I can look at this, and here's the total time. If I want to look at productive time, that's going to filter out by productive time. And if I look at unproductive time, that's going to filter out users by who have the highest productive time, right? So here you can go through, and if I'm just going to take a look at Joe as an example, Joe has got one of the highest unproductive times in our organization, right? But Joe is in charge of our shipping and receiving, right? So Joe is spending a lot of time boxing and receiving and carrying boxes up and down to UPS deliveries and so on and so forth. So that's why his productive time is so much higher. But again, the really good thing about this is you get a really good view as to where their time is being spent. And do I need to look at why Tom Cole's unproductive time is so high, or his passive time is so high?
And Matt, real quick, if I could just chime in.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing that you can notice when you see that large amount of passive time, when the agent sees that the computer is locked and still passive, it doesn't add time to that. So what we've noticed is that sometimes when people see this much passive time, they're finding out that users aren't locking their computers, or they don't have a policy in place to lock the computer. And so they're now using that to say, okay, we need to change this from a security standpoint. And that addresses their passive time going forward.
And I'd also add the unproductive. So for Joe and Peter, if Joe is moving boxes, it would actually show as passive. Unproductive means that so he may actually be going to sites that are not considered productive within what we've categorized. But the yellow would definitely be if he's away from his computer and jumping back and forth.
Right.
Does that make sense? Tony, that would be correct. With between the two? Yeah. So red is definitely, no matter what, red is always a bad thing unless we have categorized a site as unproductive, but maybe for one individual, it actually is productive for them. For like an example, like a marketing person needing to go to social media, but everyone else should not be.
Right, I'm coming down here. So here are some of the classifications that are pending, right? So we look at Microsoft Edge, which is their new browser, right? We have not classified that as productive or not, right? So when we're talking about, classifying it here, we can come down and we can classify this as a productive or unproductive, and we can also select a category, which these are the categories that are also by default, but also some that we have set up, right? So obviously we're going to classify this as admin and IT, right? And we're going to classify this as productive, okay? And now we're good with that particular application. All right. All right, so scrolling back up. So if I want to look in there, remember, I can also click into Tom as well, right? So I'm going to use Tom as the guinea pig because he's not on the webinar. So I'm going to use Tom. I'm going to click into Tom, and here's Tom. Okay, so again, we're looking at this. Here's a different view. It's showing you a stacked view of what we call the top users. Again, we're looking at last week. Okay, here again is Tom, right? And now I can break it out by day, right? And I can almost go time by time, right? So at 9:10 on 4/27, right? Tom was in Microsoft Teams, which we deem as a productive app. Here he's looking in Excel, right, for 5 minutes and so on and so forth, and he keeps going into Excel, and I would hope that he's in Excel considering he's our controller, right? Here he's logging into Manage and so on and so forth, and again, I can look at all of these, right, and I can click on it as well just to get some more details on it. So this is one of the reports that we're going to come back to. This is your top users report, but I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to come back to the dashboard. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit. And again, some of these reports, again, you have all these filters up on top, right? So I can change this dashboard if I want to look at the month. This is going to show me the month. Okay, so it really gives you a really quick view. Okay, coming down to recent screenshots, right? So this is going to take screenshots of users and what they're working on, right? So here we're looking at Andrew, right? And I can look at his screenshot if I want to blow it up. Here's Andrew's screenshot. Okay, so it looks like Andrew is working on installing an application. So I'm going to back out of here. And I can go through and I can do the latest per user, right? So if I want to look at this, this is going to filter it out. It may take a few seconds or so for the screen to refresh. It's obviously looking at each user and it's getting their last screenshot. So this may take a little more time.
Real quick, while it's loading, I did want to mention on the categorization, you can do it by groups as well. So if you've got, like a marketing team that you want going to LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever, you can mark those websites as productive for them, but make it unproductive for all your other users.
All right, so now we got it loaded. So now it's looking at each users and what their last screenshot is, and I can scroll over here and I'm going to let it refresh again. And basically it's going in alphabetical order, right? So again, it's going to pull up the next set of users and their latest screenshot. So you can see that, and obviously I can click down to see what they're actually working on at that time, okay? So here I can see just David as the example. I can see that his screen is locked. If I wanted to look at it, again, I can just click down. So moving down to another chart here, right? So we're talking about top applications, right? So you can see here at NST, our top application is Microsoft Teams, right? Followed by a program we use ConnectWise, Screen Connect, which is our remote access software, Outlook, remote desktop, and so on and so forth, right? So here are all the applications broken out by time, right? And the amount of time that we spend. Same thing for websites, right? So the number of websites that we spend our time in of all the users, right? So we use a program called IT Glue, which we use extensively. Again, this is our management software. This is our reporting software. And then Google we use all the time as well. So this is giving me both only productive, because that's how I have it filtered. If I want to filter it by unproductive, we're going to take a look and we're going to see Spotify, which again, I probably more guilty of this than anybody, right? Using Spotify to listen to music while we're working. But thankfully there's not really that many other applications that people are working on, right? And the same thing with top sites, right? If I want to look at what are the top unproductive sites, so Fox News we've declared as unproductive. I guess somebody's looking to do some shopping, YouTube, and so on and so forth. Okay. And then I can also classify it as all, which will bring all both unproductive and productive sites in one particular graph. I forgot to mention, well, as the beginning of the broadcast, that if anybody has any questions, please feel free to use the questions piece, right? So with some of this, and I'm going to come down to show you a couple other pods and reporting, there is something I do want to ask the audience, right? I do want to ask the audience about, do they have a feel as to how do you have a good feel as to your employee productivity, right? So I'm going to launch that poll, right? So if you get a second, and then seeing this, and this is where I wanted to at least show you, give you an idea as to the details that we can see. Do you feel that you can see, the same thing, or do you feel you have a good sense as to the employee productivity, just looking at what the reporting that we have? And we'll give a second for people to vote, and we'll see. All right, so overall, we're looking at, give or take, I'll close the poll. We're looking at, say, just calling it 70% of people, right, are saying that they probably don't have a good idea as to employee productivity, right? So this is definitely something that can help and potentially maybe just help with some corrective behaviors as to what people should be looking at, what applications we are defining as productive and unproductive, and so on and so forth, right? So I'm going to keep coming down here into some of the other categories. Again, so we've defined some categories, right, of all the applications and websites. We've defined admin, obviously office, chatting, right? So these are our most time spent in the categories that we have defined, right? Obviously, you can define them as well as, different categories inside your organization as well. But this is a really good idea. This is all of them. We can do it by application, or we can do it by website. Okay, so we got a lot of uncategorized websites that we need to address. Scrolling down a little further, right? So when I first saw this, probably about a month or so ago, I looked and I said, okay, so Peter is our top alarm, right? So what's considered an alarm, right? So an alarm is considered, behavior that a user is doing that would be somewhat suspicious, right? So here, Peter, right, and it's giving them a score based upon what they're doing. So, and I know Peter is on this webinar, right? So, and I gave them a heads up that I was going to use him as the example here. But so what Peter is doing here, right? Peter is basically just so you know, Peter inside of NST, he is an account executive. So Peter goes out and looks for new customers. So Peter spends a lot of time looking at sites for organizations that are moving, right? Because he wants to call them and say, hey, look, can I help with your move, right? Or is there something you need to add? We can help with your moving services and so on and so forth, right? So that's what Peter is looking at and spending his time on, right? I'm waiting for this one thing to come up. Let me scroll down here to Peter. Oh, there it came up. Okay. So here's Peter, right? And his risk report is high, right? Tom, the controller, his risk report is high as well because Tom is actually sharing some files with our accounting, which is why he came up, our outside accountant. So again, if I can drill down here into Peter again, right? It's going to give me all of the details, right, on why it's classifying Peter, right, as an alarm, right? So you can see here, Peter's got some looking at Newsday, which again he uses as a way to find out companies moving and so on and so forth. There was some really good data I wanted to show. Give me 1 second, see if I can find it. Some alarms that I saw. I am just going to show on productive. I'm going to filter out by that. So here, right, so we're working on some thermal cameras, right? So Peter's doing some research on that. So again, here we've classified that as unproductive, right? Again, if I click on here, it's actually going to take me to Peter's screen. Further down. Tony, I should get the screenshot from here, right?
So if you click on, go and scroll to the left, and then
Sorry.
click on that little screenshot icon.
Sorry.
That should take you to.
Yep. So here it is.
There we
Right. So here you can do it, right? And the other good thing that you can do through this is you can scroll through the screenshots, right? So this will give you an idea, right? Again, something to look at as to what employees are looking at, what's productive time, what's unproductive time. Okay. So I'm going to roll back up here. And again, all of these can be defined, right? So just because we consider something a risk level, you may not consider a risk level. Something we do not consider a risk level, you may consider a risk level. Okay. So again, when you come into this application, this is going to give you a really high level view as to what's going on, what people are working on, how they're working, what applications and websites they're looking at. Okay. So coming over here to the left, right? So again, real time basically will give me the ability to come in here and look at what users are doing real time, right? So this is going to take a second for everyone's to load, right? So again, it's going to look at everybody, what they're doing real time, what their screenshot is, what the name of the computer is, who the user is, and so on and so forth, right? This is going to take a little while to load, so I don't want to spend the time, but it will give you the screenshot as to what they're looking at each person, right? And I have some filters up here. I can show thumbnails, right, and so on and so forth. Reporting, right? So we give you some generic reporting on it. So top websites, top applications, categories, so on and so forth, right? So I do want to spend some little bit of time on top users because that's the one I think that we use a lot of. Okay. So again, we talked about Tom, right, and users, right? There are a couple of different views I can do, right? And as Tony mentioned, right, we're filtering it by users. If you can set up groups, so you can put in people in sales groups, you can put people in accounting groups, and so on and so forth, and filter out by groups. If I want to change the view right here, it'll give me a column view, right? So here is Tom, right, with all the users here. I particularly like the stacked view better. Again, with all of these reports and screens, I can filter out by last week, by user, refresh. I can also export the data, right? So if I want to, push it out to a download, I can do that and save the data for comparison maybe, or to show somebody else inside the organization, okay? Again, I can click on any of the users in here, right? So if I click on Chris as the example, it's going to bring up Chris's time. Again, here's Chris's time, okay? Again, if I click down on one, it's going to show me what he's working on and whether or not it's going to be considered productive, okay? Coming over here again, so we showed you some of the top websites and top applications, top categories. Let's take a look at the productivity report. Okay, so again, this is going to show me our productivity report day by day, right? I can do it week, month. Again, I can specify an individual user. So if there's a particular user that I'm working on that may be a new user, they may be around a while, they may be not understanding some of the applications or websites that we work from, I may want to focus down on that one user to see what their day looks like, how they're spending their day. Here it is giving me a breakdown on 426, user by user, right? So again, so if I want to look at, let's take Justin as the example, right? So around 1:30, he's productive, and then he becomes passive, so on and so forth, right? Again, I can scroll up and down based upon each user. I can change my day. I can change my start and end time. I can change my intervals, excuse me. All right. So again, a real good way to look at what the users are working on, okay? Risk level, so this is what we were talking about with Peter, right? And I apologize, I know Peter's listening. So Peter, I don't think you're at risk, and I don't think you're an alarm. So, but with that being said, as soon as this comes up, it'll show us basic, no user selected. So let's see. Will anything come up on this, Tony, while I'm looking at it? Oh, there it comes, sorry. Just needed a second to load. Yep. I'm always impatient, so again, here's the listing, right? Again, risk reports. Tony, talk a little bit about the risk reports. What's really defined in the risk reports?
So I've kind of seen this kind of best case use for this is to to kind of identify who are my riskiest users. Sorry, English is hard. And then I can kind of use that information to see, do I need to spend more time watching them, or are they kind of at the bottom of the list? So in your example, obviously, if I didn't know what he was doing, I'd probably be more concerned about Peter. Now that I know that, yes, he is going to be partaking in risky behaviors, I can kind of ignore this. But, maybe my second user, Cole, I don't know why he's generating so many risk points. So I can now use this report to see which ones I need to spend my time as a manager or an HR person kind of looking at more closely. So it kind of makes it more efficient how I use my time on my day-to-day, monitoring of these people.
Great.
And I'll add a couple more things, Matt. So
Sure.
a couple of things that are important. So if once we set this type of system up, typically we'll give a user account to someone in a management position that needs this for overall operations of their team. We have the ability to lock down that user to only see certain people. So there isn't giving someone access doesn't mean that they can see the productivity of everyone in the organization, because that would obviously be a privacy concern. So you can have a account have access to everything if, let's say, it's C-level person that wants to see everyone in the company. But if you're then giving out an account to someone that's maybe a middle manager, but you want them to just see their team, you can do that, and they won't be exposed to all the other information.
Great, thanks. So I just want to tackle some of the questions that have come in. So question comes up is, will this only track employee while they are on the company network, or will they be able to see company laptop use as well? So the software gets installed on the company machine, whether that is a desktop or a laptop. If they do take the laptop home, then it will track them while they are working from home or while they are home. Some other questions that have come in. Once installed and evaluated, if you find major unproductive behavior, how do employers respond? So I think there's a couple of ways to tackle that. Method number one may be you just may not want to let people know that we have this software on to track productivity, and that you're just focusing on that user and making sure that they're doing right and when they're working and they are actually working and being productive. That's number one. Number two could be if you let everybody know, obviously I think that's going to deter people from doing something that may be classified as unproductive. If you do let everybody know that the software is on everybody's machine. In my opinion, we have let everybody know that the software is on their machine. And we're, again, doing it not as a way to track what the users are doing and what they're looking at, but as a way to increase our overall productivity, to make sure that we're giving the team what they need to get the job done, right? And that's really what we're utilizing this for. Obviously, there are some things that may come up that we may have to address, just like everybody else. But we're not looking to look over everybody's shoulder. We're just looking to making sure that everybody has the right tools that they need to work, right?
Can I add? I think this is all about helping to provide corrective behaviors for people, because people may not. Sometimes it may be that they don't even realize that what they're doing is the wrong thing. And if you are able to come to them and say, this is what you should be doing, you're helping someone get over the hump and get them in a better spot. The other thing I'll note is that in general, if you have any level of security policy, something written that your staff has signed at some point, whether it's in an HR manual or a formal IT security policy, you would want to note that anytime that you are on a company device, your activities are being monitored or could be monitored. Ideally, you don't want to just out of nowhere start monitoring people's computers and not give them any kind of indication. So it's having it in a policy, and a lot of people already have it in their policies and they've never really taken advantage of it. So at this point, you're taking advantage of it. But if you have nothing, it's probably a good idea to put something in place so it's you're not just out of nowhere doing it and no one could have ever signed off on it.
Some other quick questions that have come in. So you don't necessarily have to monitor everybody's computer. You can pick and choose, right? So you may not want to monitor the HR user's computer, right, for privacy and confidential information. So it can be, you can pick and choose. If you find that behavior to be, can you reclassify behavior tagged as risky to be acceptable if you find that the behavior to be necessary? If so, can they be done on a per user basis? Tony, I think that's a question for you.
Definitely. So with pretty much everything in here, it can be done, it can be changed retroactively. In the example that you just gave, we would want to go to the specific alarm that was triggered and then change the point value for that. Now, if it's something that's been applied to everybody, that's going to be a little bit trickier because that alarm was triggered with the condition that it applies to everyone. However, if I wanted to, let's say, use Dropbox as an example. If Dropbox is still going to be a risky behavior, but it's more risky for certain users than others, I would want to make a specific alarm that applies to either those users or a group that they're in, because we do have group-based alarms as well. And then that way we can kind of adjust the points for that. So in summation, one, yes, you can go back and change the risk level scores. But if you're trying to separate someone specific and the alarm has already triggered, that is one scenario where you will not be able to specifically change it for them.
But Tony, outside of alarms, the actual behavior of going to a Dropbox, being productive or unproductive, that is
yes,
that a
absolutely.
global value, or is that grouped also?
That can be grouped. So by default, it will be global unless you go to dropbox.com in that settings classifications page, click on details, and then you can actually assign that productivity for a specific group. And that will be separate from the global setting.
Just when I thought I knew everything.
Now, to be fair, that is brand new.
Okay.
Came out about a week or so ago for everybody, so don't feel too bad.
There you go.
Okay, great. All right, so just scrolling down a little further. So obviously screenshots, right? So I can come in, I can look at history, I can look at it per user, right? So I can really drill down into each user and see what they're doing. I can scroll through it just like I showed you before. I particularly don't want to, I would happy to show anybody, you know, the product moving forward filter, moving the product further, showing you how the screenshots work. I just don't want to spend the time in bringing up the screenshots for everybody. Videos. Tony, I haven't come in here. What's the video section in here?
So videos, just like screenshots, can be configured as part of an alarm. The important thing on this particular section is configuration. So if you click on that for me, you can set up video alarms here. In my experience, it's easier to do it from the alarms page just because you have a little bit more flexibility. But the important setting here is if you look at the top left where it says pre-record videos. So the way we handle videos is one of two ways. We either will record 30 seconds from the time of whatever triggered it on, or if you check pre-record videos, the agent will retain footage. So it will have 15 seconds of activity before the alarm was triggered and 15 seconds after. So you still get 30 seconds total, but pre-recording will let you see what led up to the trigger and what happened afterwards.
So is the negative that it's more of a privacy concern potentially of that you're effectively recording all the time to be able to catch it when the alarm hits?
Kind of, since we don't actually save those videos, we're not really, it's not that much of a concern, but I do understand some people don't like being monitored in that way. So yeah, I could definitely see that.
Got it. And adding and one last thing is just adding that the video recording with the licensing typically for the solution, the video recording is usually an add-on, right?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. So one other thing I just want to mention as I come back to the dashboard, right, is that the software can be set up as a trial. So I know we have a couple of trials running right now, right? So where we can go, we can install the software, let it run for a couple of days, and then show you some of the results, right? Again, I think that in the new norm, as we say, the world we live in, right? This again is just as Brian pointed out, it's a way to help correct behaviors, right? It's a way to ensure that users are being productive in a time where not everybody is reporting to an office, right? With that being said, Brian, Tony, anything else you think I should show?
Do so. Go to screenshots and let's do redaction real quick.
Sure.
Just because you guys were talking about HR compliance and privacy concerns. So screenshot redaction is another add-on that we offer. And the way this works is when a screenshot is captured, it gets uploaded up to Google. They redact whatever you choose to do. You have 18 categories you can choose from out of, I think, 30. And then it comes back to us. Google does not retain a copy, and we don't retain a copy of the original. So the only copy of that screenshot that is saved on our servers is the one that is redacted. If you'll click on edit settings for me there in the top middle.
Sure.
So like I said, you can choose up to 18. If I was to, click on any one of these red minus signs, you'll notice that you can now click a green check mark next to any of the other ones that have not been selected. And these are broken down by region. So things that someone in the US, someone that may not be in the US probably doesn't care that much about, US social security numbers. I don't think you'll see too many of those in like the UK. So you could remove that and then add something that's more specific to that region. And these are constantly being updated. I think when we first offered it, there was maybe 20, and now we're up to around 30 or so.
Great. So this is a great way to track what people are working on, sending, so on and so forth.
Exactly.
And part of the goal here, Tony, right, is if you are in an industry where compliance is a concern, having this system potentially capturing clients' credit card numbers and social security numbers in this separate system would not be advisable.
Exactly. Because prior to redaction, the only solution was to turn off screenshots completely, which for some organizations that won't work. So this was a nice way to solve that. Is yes, we'll capture screenshots, but we're gonna black out the stuff that needs to be to maintain privacy.
Great, thank you. Anything else from your side, Tony?
I think that's it for now.
Great. Brian,
you got any more questions?
Brian, anything else I missed?
I think the only thing I'd add for anyone that's on the call, if you're interested in us setting up a trial, since you all have Matt's information from sending out the webinar, let Matt know. Our team is ready to set up trials. We can get them up and running pretty quickly. When we do a full implementation, there's a lot of customization and training, but we can get the system rolled out fairly quickly. It's usually within a effort-wise, it's about a half hour to an hour for us to get it set up, and then ideally we like to have it run for a couple of days just so we can get some decent data. And if you don't want certain people in the organization to be tracked, it's again very simple to either not install it on their machines, or we just set it as do not track within the system, and then no matter what computer you log into, you will not see that person's information ever in the system. And if they ever were in the system before, it deletes it out. So you can, after the fact, add someone in as do not track, and then their information will be wiped out of the system. And it is a silent install, so it will not, no one will see it. So we can literally do this, run it for a week. You say, I don't see the value in this, but it's good to know, and we wipe it, remove it from the systems. No one will know. So it's very simple for us to roll out on the back end.
Okay, great. And again, I can't stress this enough, because the fact that we're looking at this tool as a way to help, again, as Brian mentioned, corrective behaviors and a look at productivity and help your users and your employees with increasing productivity, which is really what we want to use this tool for. Okay, with that being said, this will bring this webinar to a close. I want to thank Brian and Tony for joining me on this Friday afternoon. And remember that it is Friday, right? We should all be happy about that. Again, as Brian mentioned, please feel free to reach out to myself or your NST account manager for any other details on this particular product. Happy to help you get set up. And want to wish everybody a great weekend, and please stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.